Welcome to level one. I'm going to have you come flat on your back. Let's get started. Let your legs be long out in front of you. Let your palms be beside your body and let them be facing up. The goal is to let everything relax, just everything go. Close your eyes, roll them back in your head, soften your jaw, soften your eyes, soften your neck. You find your chin is jetting up, maybe soften it down just a little bit. However, you can begin to just release. Lately, I've been just really working on holding a space for myself for grief. I experienced a major career transition last year. I moved my daughter into college this year. So a lot is changing and transforming. A family member came to live with us. There's just been so much that I've tried to break free from my traumatic coping of just push through, actually giving myself space to process. Maybe felt that it would be great to encourage you to do that too. Maybe there is a situation in your life that you are just feeling like you have to push through. That maybe if you stop or pause for even a moment, it might all fall apart. I used to go on walks with a friend of mine who lost her husband, and she would start to cry and apologize to me, and I would say, don't apologize, go ahead. And she's like, no, I can't, because I don't know when the wave is going to stop. So what if you allowed this time to be a space of freedom, to allow yourself time to grieve, whatever, changing life, dreams that never were realized, relationships you've lost. Because what I've learned is that on the other side of allowing that grief is freedom. And the way you talk to yourself about your grief is really important. Minimizing it, comparing yourself to anyone else's grief. So I just love to hold a space for you today. Maybe there's something you're grieving, something you're working to let go of. This is the best time to do it. Our scripture for today is Psalm 34, verses 17 and 18. It says, "The righteous cry, and the Lord hears and delivers them out of all their troubles. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." When you're ready, have you just roll over onto your belly. No fancy way to get there. Just roll over. I'm going to have you bring your hands underneath your shoulders. The tops of your feet will rest down on the ground. And not only will they rest down, they'll press down into the ground. Your gaze will be just in front of your nose a little bit. We want to make sure not to look up too much, but just in front of your nose. And then push your pubic bone down into your mat. Begin to just gently press into your hands, very gently, not a lot of weight. Press those feet in. Maybe your knees will engage so that they lift off the mat just a little bit. That's your quads working. Press your hands just a little bit and lift a little higher for 3, 2, 1. Then press your hands into the mat. Lift your whole torso in one piece off the mat, and then crawl your hands back. This is part of your warm-up. Keep your core engaged and push your hips back. Find a child's pose. So in child's pose, your forehead comes down to the ground as much as is available for you. It's just not available for some. So if you'd like to go into what's called puppy pose, you can stop mid scooting back. Stay right here. Notice that I've got just this little hammock type situation happening in my back. We want to avoid that in the future transition. So I'm going to have you watch me take that out of my back simply by engaging the front side of my belly. And then I'm going to come here, push my hips back, bring my forehead to the mat for puppy pose if child pose is not available to you. What works best for your body? Wherever you are, let your breath be generous. See, what your breath does in your practice is it creates space. I know you don't have lungs in your low back, but maybe you could breathe into that low back space, imagining as if you did. I drove away from leaving my daughter at college yesterday, and that's not the only major change that's going on in the home. There's other major changes that just make this change very unique and specific. And I just thought in my head, I don't know what this is going to look like, Lord. And I just gently heard, but I do. I do. And so you're just going to need to remain connected to me. As you're ready from child or puppy pose, whichever one you want, I want you to try to slide out as much as you can. This is kind of like an ab roller. So notice I'm not walking out, I'm sliding out, and I'm having to lift my core. It's cold where I'm filming, so probably not the wisest course of action to wear this sweater where you can't see my giving you directives. But I'm going to try to keep that. I'm going to not let my back hammock like that. I'm going to lift to the center, and I'm going to walk out. And then when I know I'm ready, I'll set my elbows down. And then here I am in like this modified planky tabletop thing. And then I will set my hips down and come to Sphinx. So in Sphinx, your full forearm and hands are pressing into the ground. You're still pushing your pubic bone down into the ground as well. You're not negating that because that would cause pressure and undue compression in the low back. Push the elbows down into the ground. So instead of kind of dipping down into your shoulders, you're lifting up out of your shoulders and engaging those spinal erectors. If you're engaged adequately, you'll even feel this down into your low back in a healthy, not a compressive way. As you're ready, we're going to slide back, and you're going to feel that this is just as hard. So push your knees into the ground, lift your belly button up first, take that tenting out, and then push your hips back, pull one arm, pull the other arm, and then as soon as you can, pull the hips back and pull both arms. Child's pose. I know that this is a lot of muscular engagement right at the outset. I'm trying to warm up all the muscles of your core and the bottom side of your shoulders. We're going to do some slow chaturanga push-ups to train you a bit. And if they ever don't work for you, just take them out and hold a plank. I'll show you that alternative. This is intentionally very slow moving, intentionally very connected to your breath, intentionally very connected to the presence of the Holy Spirit. Because we're never going to get through those waves of grief without Him. They're too overwhelming. So I think one of the reasons that my friend would never let the waves of grief come was because she knew she couldn't control it. And that's the scary thing. But sometimes what brings us grief is our lack of control. Press up from child's pose or puppy pose, and we're going to press back. This time we're going to start to speed it up a little bit. So round in that spine. Don't let the hammock situation start to come in, and give me one inhale in Sphinx. And then pull your hands back, maybe two at a time, maybe one at a time. Lift those hips and pull yourself back. So hopefully you can feel that in the tricep and in the lats. Exhale, get everything out of you for child's pose, all that breath, and then inhale. Roll back out and finish your inhale in Sphinx. And then pull those arms back, pull those hips back, heel yourself up, pull one arm, two arms, whatever it takes, and then give me two more of those, dragging yourself out and then pulling yourself back. I'm really trying to drive home this push and pull, because that is a sun salutation. If you choose to do the yoga fusion class this week, we do some sun salutations, and that pull is up dog and that push is down dog. After you've finished your last one, come into what's called tabletop. If your wrists ever bother you in tabletop, you can always just come on to your fist, and then just kind of bring some neutralization to your spine by giving me a cat and a cow. And then when you're ready, tuck your toes, come to what's called downward facing dog. It's your first downward facing dog. I'll show you the shape and then I'll start to walk you through it. So this is the shape that you take, and downward facing dog, you stay there, is a bottom body pose. So we tend to put the weight and emphasis in our shoulders, but really it needs to go into our strong, capable hips and legs. So make sure that's your emphasis. Press your heels down into the ground. Push your hands down into the ground. And if your heels don't make it to the ground, that's insignificant. You're just pressing them toward the ground. Lift your belly in and up, just like we did. No hammock. Doesn't matter if your torso goes close to your thighs. That's an insignificant thing. Find your breath. And then lastly, drop your chin to your chest so that you're not kinking up the back of your neck. From downward facing dog, when you're ready, draw your right knee into your chest, move your right hand out of the way and step your foot through. Set that knee down, come to a low lunge. If you are a block user and you have one handy, you can bring that on the outside or the inside edge of that leg. And what it will do is it will bring the floor up a little bit if it's not available for you. And then push the ground away from you. Give me what's called half split. So if you are an advanced practitioner, you can take your hips even further down. You can let your hands come back behind, closer to your hips, and then you can fold out over that front leg if that's available for you. I'm going to show the modified variation, but please know you can always make it harder anytime that you want. As you're ready, place your hand on your thigh, lift your hip up just a little bit. Now you're gonna, as you soften that hip down, it's gonna be really tempting to get some distance closer to the ground by, I'll move my arm out of your way, letting your pelvis tip forward, and then look at how much further I can go, right? Whereas if I correct that hammock situation in my back, I have to come actually out of it by that much. And it's worth it because it's going to protect your low back. Then your hamstrings and your glute on the right side are stabilizing and getting stronger, while the back side of your front leg is getting stronger. Bring your hands, interlace them behind your back. So now you can't use your hands. Use your right heel, dig it into the ground, push the leg away from you. Keep that foot down. You can see my foot is down. And this time, go ahead and hold it out. A bit of a balance, so chin to chest, drop that chin down. And then you can choose to go back and forth, keeping your hands behind your back. So inhale, soften those hips down, keep the belly engaged. Exhale, push the foot into the ground, find that hinge. It's not wrong to use your hands, but if your legs are capable, they are stronger and meant to take this weight. So if you're newer to yoga and balance is an issue, keep your hands down by your side. Just be sure not to use them to push away and come into the split. And then when you're ready, hands come on either side of that foot. You're going to tuck your back foot under first and lift off your back knee, and then step the right foot back. Find tabletop. Give me a couple of cat and cows. Maybe this time you want to do a barrel roll. You want to go in a circle. And then take that circle the other direction. You can choose to take a downward facing dog or a child's pose in between, your choice, whatever you consider more restful. Either way, just soften everything down. Just allow the breath, like that wave, to move through you. Remember, I'm not necessarily today teaching you a lesson or giving you a message on grief. I just want this to be a space that you hold for yourself. Grief doesn't need more information. It just needs to be experienced and released. We'll be talking a lot less this class, so that you can just experience it. Wherever you are, come to that tabletop and then work your way to downward facing dog. This time your left knee comes into your chest. Keep your block handy as you set that foot through. We're gonna go slow the first time and then we'll speed it up. Notice how far over my knee I am. I'm gonna come back. I didn't gauge my step very well. So I'm gonna come back. You'll notice, keep my toe tucked under because that feels better on my knee. You could always untuck it, your choice. And then as you're ready, go ahead and put that hip back and then just fold it out. Don't overthink this first one too much. Just take the shape, feel the shape. If you were using your block before, feel free to grab it again. And then come forward and simply lift up. Check in with that low back. Are you releasing it so you can go really low like this, or are you keeping it engaged, pushing that back knee into the ground, which will bring your right hip forward, finding neutral. In that way, you'll get much more of your hip flexor than you would if you let everything go. When you let everything go like this, it's a back bend, not a hip stretch, not a hip flexor stretch. Interlace those hands behind you. Open your chest, squeeze your shoulder blade, open your heart, and then begin to hinge forward. Your heel is what's pushing back. My foot is flat on the ground. And inhale, I'm opening my heart. I'm using an open heart and working my hips at the same time. That is intentional when it comes to grief. I'm encouraging you guys to open your heart, which is a place that often in grief gets closed off, appropriately so sometimes. And then I'm also having you move your hips, which is a place grief can settle in. In traditional Chinese medicine, it's in your lungs. That's the organ associated with grief. And so we're also using our breath. We're doing all these things on that energetic level where you don't need knowledge. You don't need another message. You don't need to talk. You just need to move and breathe and send yourself some loving kindness. You've got about one more. Press those hips back. And then come forward, tuck that back toe under, lift off of that back leg first, step that left foot back and find downward facing dog. We'll do a little bit of a hip opening flow. Again, we're focusing on an open heart, working our hips, and cultivating our breath. With your body and your heart and the Holy Spirit, they know what you need. Your intellect doesn't even need to be involved. When you're ready, bring that right leg forward, step it in between your hands. Bring your hand to your knee. You can tuck or untuck that back toe and then come up. So this pose, while it might seem easier because it's down on the ground, it's actually very difficult for the hips. You don't have as much support on the back leg as if you were standing up. So push that front foot into the ground, bring your hands to heart center, get nice and tall in your spine, and then take that left elbow to the outside of that right knee. Bit of a hip opener as well, in that we're twisting in the thoracic vertebrae and we're having to work to anchor our hips with the lower abdominals. Maybe you turn and look over that shoulder. Soften the hips even more. Keep that belly button engaged the whole time. And then as you're ready, hands come down on either side of your legs. You can move your block away, tuck those toes under. Notice when I went to shift, please watch this for just a moment. I went to shift, I leaned forward and lifted my back leg. What does that allow for? It allows me to kind of pull my knee forward a little bit, set my foot down, and then lift my hips and then look at my spacing with my leg. My knee is directly over my heel, my back heel is lifted, and now I can move directly into crescent lunge and I'm not too wide. Sometimes we go from a low crescent lunge really wide, and if we don't do that little shift forward now, look at how I'm way too long. I needed to come forward just a little bit and then lift up to crescent lunge. Soften the tailbone down. This is still a very engaged pose. We're still contracting the back side of the front leg and stretching the front side of the back leg. Maybe you bring your arms overhead. And then hands come down on either side of that foot. Lift the hips high by straightening that front leg. You're going to bump your back leg in and use your block for pyramid. If you're a block user, I'm a fan of being a block user even if it's not in your regular practice. What that does is helps you get your alignment. Now, I am not leaning on this block. I'm using it and I'm doing what a lot of yoga teachers call tenting. I'm tenting my fingertips so that I can't put all of my weight into here. Find that breath, push both legs into the ground, push both feet into the ground, and soften your chin towards your chest just a little bit so that your spine from your tailbone all the way out the top of your head can be nice and strong. Adding a balance here. If balance is a little bit difficult for you, please feel free to widen your feet. So bend your front leg, widen your feet, and then lift your right arm high. Now, I strained my neck a couple days ago, so I don't have a lot of range of motion. I'm going to keep my gaze down so I can protect my neck. Pull that bottom shoulder back towards the left hip so that you're not leaning into your shoulder like this, but you're pressing away and lifting out of it for 3, 2, 1. Hand is going to come down, and we're going to take all that to the other side. We're simply going to take our block with us, turn towards the back. We're not going to stop there yet, and we're going to go just the opposite of what we did. So now I'm facing the back, and I'm going to find my twisted pyramid. So we're going to go in the reverse order. So that left hip, pull it back, pull that right shoulder back towards the right hip, and maybe you look up. Pull the shoulders down away from the ear. Maybe if you are ready to feel the grief, maybe as we've been practicing and you know you're ready, left hand comes down, take just a regular pyramid. So if you need to make your step less wide, go for it. Fold it out. You can use your block to bring the floor up to you. From the tailbone to the top of the head, you want one long line. Maybe as you breathe and move, you just allow your thoughts to go to that thing. You might feel like you want to cry, you might get angry. What if you just allowed that? What if this was a safe space that you created for yourself? When you're ready, release that block, come up nice and high, bend to this knee just a little bit to protect it, and then you can widen your stance. Give me that crescent lunge. So we're going backwards in our flow. Shoulders come down. If your ribs kind of flared out, knit them back together and gain that shoulder mobility by anchoring through your ribs and then pulling your arms back behind your ears. Soften your chin down. And then as you're ready, begin to lower down in your lunge. Find that lunge that we started in, hands on the knees. Hands at heart center. Take your twist, this time right elbow outside of the left leg, and then pull that right hip back so that you're not letting everything collapse into the twist, but you're still remaining engaged. For 3, 2, 1. Hands come down. Lift that leg. Lift your hips nice and high so that you can pull this left leg and put it behind you for downward facing dog. Maybe child's pose is more appropriate rest for you. Child's pose or downward facing dog. The message paraphrase of that same verse says, is anyone crying for help? God is listening, ready to rescue you. If your heart is broken, you'll find God right there. If you're kicked in the gut, He'll help you catch your breath. I loved that translation because the only physical description I could ever muster for grief is the feeling of being kicked in the gut, like just your breath taken away from you. Sometimes we know the thing is coming. Sometimes we don't know the thing is coming. It doesn't change our experience of the grief. It's still a thing that we don't want to be going through. Go through that flow again. This time we're going to lead with our left leg since we're at the back of the mat. And then we're going to go through it first to last and then turn around, go last to first. So find downward facing dog. Have your block handy. If you're using it, your left leg comes into your chest and then you step it through, lower that leg down, find your lunge. So we don't want to negate because we're going to move a little quicker and we know what's coming. We don't want to negate anything because we know what's coming. So bring your hands at heart center and really be in the posture, honoring all of those foundational engagements, even though you know what's coming. So pull your shoulders back and down, soften your neck. As you're ready, come forward, hands on either side of the leg. Lift that back leg. You might want to kick it in a little bit. And then lift your arms high. Give me a crescent lunge. Working on the front side and back side of our hips today. Hands come down. If you're using your block, find pyramid, kick that back leg in, flatten it, and then round out. Your chin will come to your chest so that the back side of your neck is nice and long. And then lift out of that pyramid and bring your left arm high. Give me a twist. You can widen your legs. If balance is a bit of an issue for you, please feel free to widen those legs. Left hand, bring it down. We're going to take everything through center. This time, go ahead and bow out. So you're going to allow your weight to go into the tops of your feet on both sides. Both feet will turn in and then bow forward. Let your chin go down to your chest. Imagine the contents of your head from the bottom of your spine down through your head, spilling out. Any muscles that attach to your pelvis are considered your core. We now have a more full understanding. In the early 2000s, we started talking about the core a ton in fitness, and it was always here. It was always Pilates, it was always yoga, it was always core work, always right here. Anything that attaches to any side of the spine or pelvis are considered to be part of your core. So just let gravity undo all of that and then get that good stretch in your inner thighs, some of your core muscles. As you're ready, grab your block, take it with you, transition to the front. We got to do that twisted pyramid. So now we're doing it backwards on the right leg. So your right leg will lift nice and high. The front of the mat is the front again. Unfurl that left shoulder from your ear. Pull it back by that left hip and lift your right arm high. Soften your chin to your chest so the back of your neck stays nice and long. And then your right hand comes down. Show me a pyramid pose. So generally both feet are pointing forward, but if your back leg is turned just a little bit, that's no problem. I like in pyramid to run my chin across my chest and open up the back side of my neck muscles by pulling my chin in as close as I can to my neck and then drawing a smile on my collarbone. Bend into that front knee. You might want to let that left leg slide back a little bit and then give me that crescent lunge. We're doing a combination of hip stability and mobility at the same time while really working our breath and opening our heart. Knee comes down. Give me that twisted crescent lunge. Hands to heart center. Give it a twist. Left arm comes to the outside of the right leg. Maybe you look behind you. Generous in your breath. Let your breath try to fill up that confined space. It'll massage your organs a bit. And then come center, lift up, and then let's get that ultimate hip stretch. Move your block out of the way, hands come down, and then just toe heel that foot into what's known as pigeon pose. So I'll show you an alternative if you don't like face down, but tent, your hands are tented, right? You're not leaning, you're lifting and you're giving yourself a back bend. You'll notice I have a little bit of a sway in my back. I'm still engaging my core, pulling my right shoulder back so that I'm squaring my hips, and then maybe look up, give me that open heart. If you are an experienced practitioner and you want more, you can always interlace your hands behind you, squeeze those shoulder blades, look up, and then hinge forward in your hips. You have your block handy. You can rest your forehead on your block, or you can come all the way down with your heart opener, and then just let your hands collapse around your shoulders. If you don't like pigeon in that way, always come onto your back, cross your leg like a gentleman would in a chair, and just pull it in towards your chest. Same general hip stretch, but much more gentle. What feels good to you? What communicates to your own heart and mind and body that you, your will, your mind, the spirit that is you, what would communicate to you that you will be a safe place for you? That you don't necessarily need to look to other human beings to be that safe place, but you can begin to be that safe place for you. Where emotions become exploratory and not the enemy. That psalm goes on to say, disciples so often get into trouble. Still, God is there every time. He's your bodyguard, shielding every bone. Not even a finger gets broken. So hard to reconcile these words with the hurt that we feel. As we allow that hurt to come up, we see that God is the greatest alchemist, that he will take all of that pain and somehow make it good. I don't necessarily believe that God lets bad things happen to you just so he can show you how he'll use it. I think some of the things that happen to us are because sin, and other people choose to sin, and I can't control that. I know that my mom's abuse towards us was not God's doing to me. So those words can get confusing when it says right here, he's not going to let anything hurt you. Take that confusion to him. As you're ready, begin to push yourself up, whether you're face down or face up. We're just going to switch sides. So you can go through downward facing dog if you want this to be more physical, but if you don't, pull that left leg in front of you and then bring the right leg behind you. Just switch sides if you're on your back. Find kind of, I am a big fan, especially with the hips, because it's a circle around the front, back, and side. Just moving around a little bit, especially on my left side in pigeon. I'm much less flexible on my left side than my right. I'm going to find my way there. I'm going to tent my fingertips. I'm going to lift my hips high, and then I'm going to interlace my hands behind me. We're going to do that. Open hips, open heart, open lungs. And then as you exhale, soften down. Hold that heart opener until you get to the very bottom, and then just allow everything to round on top of that leg. Again, that does not work for you because that is a weight-bearing pose. You can always cross one leg over the other and then reach through and draw it in. The things that this psalm talks about is the ability to taste and see God. And in order to do that, you got to get out of your head. I think we try so hard to understand grief and pain. I don't think we're meant to. We're not sovereign. We're not God. We're not omnipresent. We're not omniscient. We're not in all places at once and all powerful. We don't think like he does. We only know in parts and pieces, Paul says. really only left with trust. Even if you don't believe in a higher power or something like that, you're in the same situation. There's not much left to do but trust the powers that be, because understanding in the face of deep, painful grief, I've never found it to be very comforting. As you're ready to close out your practice, take a couple more deep breaths here. We want to try to hold our poses evenly from side to side. We don't want to rush on the second side just because we know the pose. And when you're ready, just pull that leg out from under you and come flat on your back again. If you have a sweater or a blanket nearby, cover yourself. Maybe you want to choose child's pose and cover yourself up. Taking this final few moments, about 2 or 3 minutes, to just invest in you. The adult you holding a safe space for whatever age you were when the thing happened, or maybe it's happening to you now. Rest here and hold a space. If you even feel like you want to get up, you can lay here as long as you want. And maybe you roll onto your side. You roll into the fetal position and just roll into the smallest ball you can. Just the most childlike, trusting posture you can take. And then maybe come to a seated position on your mat, hands at heart center. Lord, we love you. It's said that we either get understanding or you. And I can't imagine understanding is comforting. When we've experienced loss, knowing why doesn't always bring comfort. So Lord, choose you. dependent on every breath you provide. And we just need to make it to the next one sometimes. So thank you, Lord, for sustaining us. We love you. You are good and you are faithful. And we say this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Have a great day.